her trauma, she is not in a position to be providing support to other survivors of trauma. And unfortunately, I know this because I worked at a rape crisis center training people to work with survivors of trauma. And I don't know how, because in any scenario, there is training, obviously, and that training involves role play so that when you get actually live with a survivor, you are prepared. When you are role playing that trauma, you are not role playing made up events. You are role playing real trauma that you have processed and are able to present safely, is the instruction. And part of that is, so if we see that you are not properly like prepared to deal with that trauma in a clinical type setting, like you're not necessarily prepared to help other people. So let's maybe rein it back for a little bit and find something else that's more appropriate. That would have been screened. You know what I mean? Sydney would not have made it past the screening process.
So we've met Detective Dempsey, and then it seemed like she just got the call that the Cotton Weir is dead, and she did not, I mean, maybe you never handle that well, but she did not handle that well.
Yeah. And Via, you've got things to say. I can see it.
I do. Because Jay, I agree with both of you. I agree with both of you in different ways. So for me, it's like, it made perfect sense to me that she was reclusive in a house with a bunch of security systems and like the dog and everything. Like that was, yeah, she's gone through so much trauma. Of course, like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, why? Dude, if that were me and I went through all of that, my house would just be one big security camera. I'd live in a bunker.
For
like,
sure.
You know what I mean? But then at the same time, it's like, you have that route, which is fine. Absolutely. Take that route. And then you have the route of like making, you know, and for people who don't automatically think of like, because on first watch of this, like, if you're not thinking like, she shouldn't be giving that kind of advice if she's reclusive, like, it does make sense that she would be a crisis, like, call center person. Like, she had been through all of that, but then at the same time, she's reclusive. So these are two things that make sense for, if you're just surfacely looking at the character, it makes sense. But if you are thinking of who Sydney is and like how strong she is, one doesn't make sense with the other. Yeah. I would say the house doesn't make sense, but being a crisis counselor on the phone would, because Sydney is strong. We know Sydney to be strong. We've seen it happen. We've seen this chick take on all of these horrific situations and come out on top. So we know that Sydney's a strong character. So, you know, had she just maybe if they had her live in a big city or something, you know, and then be and like we see her walking into a crisis center or something like that, it makes sense. Like, pick your side for her, though. And Jay, I get that. I 100% get what you're saying. And then Alina, I 100% agree with you about being the house. But like, the movie should have just picked one or the other. They are
two completely opposite spectrums of being very, you've dealt with your trauma versus I have not dealt with my trauma.
Yeah. So they're very opposite ends, but, you know, and it is a bummer because I see Sydney as such a strong woman. It doesn't, it gives you a little like back and forth.
I just want to point out how like, loud the screen is right now.
Yes, the colors.
So we have
welcome to the early 2000s.
Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers, and then her bright yellow pantsuit, and then we have Parker Posey as Jennifer Jolie playing Gale Weathers in her neon green dress from the first Scream movie.
Yeah, so we should say that Scream 3 is again based in Hollywood and everything, because they are on the set filming Stab 3. So that's where all of these murders are taking place. So we're not in high school, we're not in college, we are now on a movie set. So Dewey, David Arquette, is going to run into the actor that's going to play him. And then, you know, Parker Posey is playing Jennifer Jolie, who is playing Gale Weathers. And so you're going to see a lot of Parker Posey and Courtney Cox together in a lot of scenes. And I love them together. I think they're very Tweedledee, Tweedledum, very like cat dog. Like, one thinks that they're smarter than the other, but neither one of them is really helping the situation. Like they still both don't know what to do. So, but the one is trying to lead the other. So it's good. I really like that. And I really also hate who they chose to play Sydney. I don't like that actress. I don't think it worked for the movie. She was a big bummer for me.
And she was a hypothetical second killer.
Oh, I have so much to talk about that hypothetical second killer later on in the movie. Because my headcanon is that she is the second killer. I think there's an accomplice. It's edited in such a way, I think there's an accomplice.
And that's just it. One of my other larger complaints with the movie, another thing Aaron Kruger is on record saying, is that some of the scenes he wrote were so out of character that Wes Craven fucking rewrote the movie half the time. So it's a Wes Craven movie more than it's an Aaron Kruger movie. And so that's why
which is good.
It's kind of uneven because of that.
Wes Craven sighting coming up in this group of tourists going around the lot with Jay and Silent Bob. So the tan fedora hat is Wes Craven.
The Jay and Silent Bob thing, man, I'm a fan of those guys. Or I guess, yeah, I'm still a fan of those guys. But I grew up.
You're still a fan of those guys. Those guys
they don't fit
awesome.
Here.
No.
This is where it almost seems like the movie is parodying itself, because Scream original was meta for the horror genre. And I feel like Scream 3, where it should have lived, where it tried to live, was being meta on Hollywood overall. And that has some interesting takes on it, especially later in the movie.
Yeah.
But then I think it gets muddled and it really just is meta on meta. Like it parodies itself. It parodies this movie when they're talking about rewrites and pages and reshoots and delays, that they're doing this movie instead of the Hollywood genre or another Scream movie.
Like, it's funny that you point that out, because as they're doing that, part of it is they're trying to parody what happened on the second movie where they had a bunch of rewrites on the fly, but those went much better than it did in this case. In this case, you had different writers working on different scenes at different times. So you have different plot points that got dropped along the way. And it's a whole fucking missed connections along the way. It's like that telephone game where person A starts with something and person Z says something totally different. And that's why you have these weird haunting scenes, and you're not sure if it is a clever trick that the killer is playing or if it's Sydney actually hallucinating. And it's unclear if it's what it's exactly supposed to be. Going back to Angelina as the second killer, there are threads of it in the movie still that are confusing, but there are so many red herrings in the movie that they're all ultra confusing, because Patrick Dempsey, we said, potential red herring, he's wearing the jeans and boots that the killer wears in every single movie. And then one of the things I read said that the other detective, Josh Pais,
that at one point in one script, he was the killer.
Yeah. So there's so many different things out there, and it's like they filmed it all and then forgot what lines they were connecting.
That sounds like my brain.
One of my favorite highlights of this movie is the scene with Sydney and her dad, where she's sitting down and they're like, why did mom do this to us? How did mom have a whole second life we didn't know about with the affairs? And I really enjoy that. If it grounds it in reality that Sydney would have to sit down with her dad and be like, why was she like this? And try to reconcile that love and confusion you have with someone, especially after the fact, after their death.
I really liked that scene as well. Especially because we didn't get any of Sydney's dad in really the first two movies. So for him to not be totally forgotten and to actually be a presence, it does make the overarching theme of what Sydney's mom has done and gotten to the point where we end up with our killer in this movie. It helps give it some weight, so it's not totally out of the blue.
So here's another instance. So Jenny McCarthy is now on set, walking around looking for Roman, the director, where I think it parodies itself. Because point one is I got the impression that Stab 3 was kind of like the Evil Dead 2 remake of the Stab movies, because they already have a Stab 1 about the Woodsboro murders. They already have a Stab 2 about the Windsor College massacre. So what is this movie if you're back to Woodsboro and you have all these characters like a Randy stand-in? But so she, on the phone, she's going to say or complain to the director, why did I have to start the show movie in the shower? That's dumb. Why do I have to be naked? And that's how we found Cotton Weary's girlfriend was naked in the shower when she gets killed. So again, it's making fun of itself while you're watching it.
Yeah.
Also, do you think she was supposed to be Tatum, Casey Becker, or Cotton Weary's girlfriend from 20 minutes ago?
I don't know.
I wasn't comparing it to anything. I wasn't comparing it to anything. I was just like letting it stand on its own. Yeah, I really like how meta the movie is and how it's making fun of Hollywood and everything. And I think it fits in well with the other Screams, because it's like, you're right. Yeah. The first one was kind of a parody of the regular horror tropes, and the second one parodied itself. And then I just feel like this goes along with it. Like, you're still getting your meta, you're still getting your parody, you're still getting your satire. Like, and Jay, I do agree with you. It does. There's a lot of waving. There's a lot of up and down. So it's like you still get your same effect, but it's just different this time around. So you're still getting a Scream movie. It's just not the Scream movies you remember. So I feel like it's still a Scream movie. It's just, it's got its waves. Yeah. It's got its waves. There's a lot that written that, and I don't think that had they gone with just Wes Craven taken full charge of it and everything and writing it the way that he wanted to, since he had to rewrite over half the movie anyway, you might as well have just let him take it on. So I think had we just had like a full-fledged Wes Craven movie, this would have been probably the best Scream in the entire saga. In just how I feel about
if it was Wes Craven unchained and uncensored, absolutely. The problem is, when the movie was shot, there was such a pushback on any sort of violence that they fucking couldn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, so Danny McCarthy is in the wardrobe closet with all the Ghostface costumes for Stab. I get My Bloody Valentine vibes, or is it just overall trope?
Yeah,
I don't know that it's a trope. I don't recall seeing it in a lot of other movies.
Yeah, like in all of the Halloweens. Have you ever seen like a bunch of random suits and a shit ton of Jason masks or Michael Myers masks?
There have been a couple. Like in Halloween 2 specifically, there's I think Ben Travers wears the mask, but he has the white hair instead of the brown hair. Yeah, I think it's Travers. I forget.
And now we get the funny, goofy action scene of her picking up prop weapons that are like and falling over.
Yeah, they are clearly like foam. Like she picks it up and it like wobbles. It's like this clearly foam object.
The tropiness of it makes me think of like I Know What You Did Last Summer, where the protagonist is walking through a room of mannequins that are tarped over, and the killer's going to be in there. So that's where it seemed maybe tropey, but otherwise My Bloody Valentine vibes, where just tons of things hanging. And so now Dewey and Gail are at the cafe comparing notes about how their relationship ended.
Is it weird that I like Courtney Cox's bangs in this scene?
No, you don't.
No, I do.
No, you don't.
Here's the thing. Nope. It looks like she has if she had two little pigtails at the back, it's like a kind of punky little thing that I like, but when it's all long and down, I don't like it.
It's supposed to be Betty
That-
Page.